CGTN, China Global Television Network. Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello there, I'm Paul Barber. Our top stories this hour. Polls close in Turkey for what's been called the most pivotal election in the country's history. Can President Erdogan hold on, or will the opposition alliance unseat him? Vote counting is underway in Thailand's general election. Early results show the two main opposition parties firmly ahead. The time to act is now, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky tells Western leaders as he urges an end to the conflict with Russia during a visit to Germany. And
we have a winner! Sweden! You have won the Eurovision Song.
hitting a high note, Sweden's Loreen becomes the first woman to win the Eurovision Song Contest twice, as Liverpool hosts the world's biggest musical event. People have been voting in Turkey in one of the most pivotal elections in the country's modern history. Voters are deciding whether Recep Tayyip Erdogan will remain president after 20 years in power. Erdogan is facing his greatest challenge yet from a united group of 6 opposition parties. Earlier, Erdogan and his main rival, the veteran Republican Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, cast their votes. Let's go live to Istanbul and our correspondent Trent Murray. Trent, we've had some initial results already come in. What can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right, Paul. The Federal Electoral Council here has just lifted what's known as the broadcast ban, meaning we are able to start sharing some of those initial results for you. So I'm going to go through what we have. The initial results show that with 17% of the vote counted, it is a sizable lead for President Erdogan. He's currently sitting on just under 56% of the vote. His main opponent, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, 38% of the vote, and then the third-party candidate, Orhan, is on 5.37. I think the two numbers we need to look at are Erdogan and Kılıçdaroğlu. Erdogan has clearly got a lead right now over that crucial 50% mark. What we should say is that we believe that those are largely rural and farming community voting centres. They are smaller booths where the votes have been able to be counted quicker. President Erdogan traditionally has done very well in those areas, so I would take those results with a little bit of a grain of salt. We really do need to wait for some of the bigger cities to come in. Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, Kayseri, that is when we will get a clearer picture of whether he'll be able to hold on to that lead. I mean, to give you an idea, 1 in 6 Turkish voters are here in Istanbul, so we do just have to wait a little bit. But certainly, I think if you're in the Erdogan camp right now, you would be pleased to see those numbers. As I say, just almost 56% of the vote right now going to Erdogan, 38% for his main opponents.
And the polls had been pretty tight, hadn't they, in the lead-up to the vote? Turnout always pretty high as well in Turkish elections. Do we know this time if that's the case?
We're still awaiting initial turnout figures, but what I can tell you is traditionally about 85% of Turks will turn out in elections. There were some expectations that number could get closer to 90% this election. Certainly anecdotally, from what I was seeing in Istanbul today, there were enormously long lines, and we've heard reports of people still lining up after the polls have closed, and they have been told to basically stay where they are, that their vote will still be counted, even if the ballot centre has closed. If they are in the line, that they are still eligible to vote. Both camps, I should say, using social media to urge their supporters not to leave those lines and to make sure that their voice is heard at the ballot box.
And Trent, there were concerns raised about how voting would be handled in the earthquake zones. Do we know how that's gone?
Well, we saw large numbers of people return in many ways to some of those cities that were hit by the earthquake. In Hatay province, for example, we saw busloads of people going back to vote. That's important because under the electoral rules here, they have to vote in their home city where they are registered. Many of them have left those cities because the damage is just too great. A lot of those cities are virtually uninhabitable right now. But based on what we saw, folks there wanted to make sure that they could cast their ballot. I was actually down there earlier this week, and you would meet people who very much feel like the government helped them a lot and they wanted to vote for President Erdogan, but then there were a lot of other people who feel like the government let them down, that they may still be on a long waiting list to try and be rehomed, and really were probably looking at today as a way to try and cast a protest vote, if you will, against President Erdogan. It was always going to be a tough fight for him. 20 years he has been in power. Trying to ask for another term after that long is difficult, no matter the circumstances. The earthquake, I think, certainly has shaken up the arithmetic in that region. Analysing those numbers as more results come in, I think, will be really key here to understand how those caught up in that disaster, the disaster of the century, as the Turkish media call it, how they will vote tonight, in this crucial election.
Many thanks indeed for that, Trent Murray in Istanbul. Well, let's get more analysis on this election now with Paul Levin, who's Director of Stockholm University's Institute for Turkish Studies. Thanks very much indeed for joining us today. Let's step back a bit. We're getting these early results in now, still quite a long way to go before we have to be a runoff. Looking at the bigger picture, why are the stakes so high for Turkey? Can you explain to us why this election is considered so pivotal?
Well, thank you for having me, and it truly is a pivotal election. Erdogan has been in power for over 20 years, since 2002, his party, 2003, himself as then Prime Minister, later President. And he's really reshaped Turkey to a great extent, both domestically and in terms of its foreign policy. Turkey has become more of an autocratic state over the past 10 years, and the opposition now is presenting a serious challenge and a vision of a more democratic Turkey that wants to reorient its foreign policy also. And it's also an election that will have, I think, a significant impact and consequences for the rest of the world.
And how unusual is it for opposition parties to unite together like this behind a candidate? And how much of a change could they usher in if their candidate does win the presidency?
Well, they've tried in the past. In 2015, an opposition managed to unseat the majority that Erdogan held in parliament, but they failed to agree on a coalition government. And this is the first time that they sort of really have come together, presented a unified front, a unified program, and an alternative. But it is a really diverse coalition with everything from a small Islamist party to Turkish nationalist and to the larger Social Democratic Party. And they also require the support of a pro-Kurdish party, a radical leftist party outside of the coalition, which lends its support to the opposition candidate. And they promised to, as I said, reinstitute democracy in Turkey, release political prisoners, and also transform the system back to a parliamentary system as opposed to the now presidential system that Turkey has, where the president holds a lot of power. But it has many tasks in front of itself. Whoever wins will have to rebuild the earthquake-struck areas in southeastern Turkey. They will have to deal with the Turkish economy, which stands on the brink of a crisis, and many other challenges as well.
So you mentioned the economy alongside those democratic concerns, clearly economic problems, seemingly uncontrollable inflation, really top of the list of concerns of voters. What are the two candidates and the party promising on delivering economic change?
Well, I don't know the details, and some of the promises are, typical populist promises, if you will. The opposition went out and promised a 40% hike of minimum wages of state employees, government employees. Erdogan topped that with placing himself just a little bit above that. So whoever it is, the current government has kicked the can down the road, if you will. Erdogan has pursued a monetary policy in particular, where he's pressured the central bank, which used to be independent, to keep rates low despite high interest rates, and that has, as you mentioned, led to very high inflation. The Turkish lira has also fallen against the dollar and the euro the past 10 years, since about 2013, in fact. And that has led to a weak purchasing power, and it's now difficult for many Turkish families to make ends meet, if you will. So whoever takes charge will have a big task in trying to deal with the economic woes of the country.
Certainly a massive inbox. Thank you very much, Paul Levin from Stockholm University. We really appreciate your thoughts. Thank you. Now, in other news, vote counting is underway in Thailand's general election, with early unofficial results showing big wins for the opposition. The Pheu Thai party is ahead in constituency seats, followed by the Move Ahead party. Opposition Pheu Thai is led by the daughter of ousted former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. Incumbent Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, the army general who led the last military coup in 2014, is seeking another term. While the economy was a big factor during the election campaign, our Bangkok correspondent Chawarat Yongjiranong tells us what changes the Thai people are expecting from the next Prime Minister.
I think the economy is one of the main factors to why we've seen such a big turnout from the Thai people in the elections. A week ago, with the advanced voting, we had around 91% of the voters coming out. This weekend, with this election today, it was forecast at 85%. Now, that's not been confirmed, but for sure, in everyone's mind, if you take a look at the GDP for 2023, Thailand is expected to be at around 3 to 3.6%. Now, this is far below what is the average of the ASEAN or the Southeast Asian region economies, which is at around 5.6%. This has been something that has been observed over the years since 2000. So the three key issues that will have to be addressed with the new government is, one, income inequality among society, whether the political policies will be able to give more confidence to the people of Thailand that they are being taken care of by the government. Two is the economic revival that is expected post-pandemic. We are opening up, but are we opening up fast enough? Are we sustaining that speed? And thirdly, transforming the ecosystem here in Thailand so that it is more attractive to foreign investors to come in, cut the red tape, and have businesses going, and so that the economy can grow, and of course then overall the Thai people will have better lives. So everything really much counts on these votes today, and that's why it's so important for Thailand.
You're watching CGTN Still to Come. Sweden took home the crown for Eurovision on Saturday for their record-equalling 7th time. We're in Liverpool to find out more.
Roger,
we can try out the wild and crazy ideas.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time is coming. This idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we try to save the world.
We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities, reinvent, find new opportunities, discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
This week on Razor, the scientist using origami to fight antibacterial resistance. And saving eyesight using robots and stem cells.
It's as if you cut the human hair 10 times and then you need to go with one of those tools in between those layers while the patient is awake. And that's something that humans just cannot do. That's where robots come in.
Hi there, welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. Polls close in Turkey for what's been called the most pivotal election in the country's modern history. Can President Erdogan hold on, or will the opposition alliance unseat him? Vote counting also underway in Thailand's general election. Early results show the two main opposition parties are firmly ahead. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has thanked Germany for being a true friend during a trip to Berlin. Zelensky's visit came a day after Germany announced $3 billion of military aid to Kiev, its largest package yet. It's the Ukrainian president's first visit to Germany since the conflict with Russia began last year. He urged Western nations to help bring peace back to Europe.
The time to act is now. We all want this war to finally end, but end with justice and peace. Ukraine and the whole of Europe must be free. Our territorial integrity and security, as well as the territorial integrity and security of all the people of Europe, must be guaranteed. Now is the time for us to determine the end of this war.
And let's go to our correspondent, Peter Oliver in Berlin. Peter, what kind of welcome did President Zelensky receive?
It was a very warm welcome for the Ukrainian president here in Berlin. Full military honours as he arrived in the German capital for his first meeting, which was with the German president Frank-Walter Steinmeier. He later then had a meeting with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and the German Security Council. Now, this visit to Berlin came the day after Germany had announced a new military aid package for Ukraine, a military aid package to the tune of $3 billion. Now, it includes new tanks, some 30 new tanks, new Leopard 2 tanks, also anti-aircraft systems as well as ammunition. Now, in making that announcement, we heard from Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister, saying that Germany would give all the help it can for as long as it takes for Ukraine to be successful in its conflict with Russia. Now, that was really echoed in what we heard from the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. He talked about the aid that had been given from Germany to Ukraine. You've got to remember, Germany had been heavily criticised in many circles for being what was seen by some as being slow to give military aid to Ukraine. They weren't amongst the first to provide military hardware to Ukraine when the fighting started. However, they have become one of the biggest donors. Olaf Scholz pointing out that they've given $18.5 billion worth of military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine so far, and he said that they will continue to help and continue to provide both military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky isn't here in Berlin at the moment. He's currently in the western city of Aachen, where he's just been awarded the Charlemagne Prize, one of the biggest prizes you can receive in Germany for services to Europe. But before they headed over to Aachen, speaking at the joint press conference here in Berlin, we heard from Chancellor Olaf Scholz talking about prospects of peace in the fighting and saying that peace in Ukraine cannot be on Russia's terms.
Ukraine
is ready for peace, but this cannot mean simply pausing the war and for Russia to dictate peace. This is an imperialistic attack on Ukrainian territory, and peace and security in Europe are at risk by the idea that a powerful country can attack a less powerful country or annex part of its territory.
So, Peter, from what the Ukrainian president was saying on this visit to Berlin, do peace talks with the conflict with Russia seem likely at any time soon?
They don't seem all that likely in the foreseeable future. However, that isn't stopping nations or senior figures on the world stage from trying to get sides to come together to talk. On Saturday, Volodymyr Zelensky was in Rome, and during that visit he went to the Vatican, he met with the Pope, and the leader of the Catholic Church offered to mediate between the sides in the conflict to try and find a solution. That wasn't particularly well received by the Ukrainian side. I don't know whether it's right to say well received, but anyway, what the Ukrainian president wanted to see was a condemnation from the Pope of the actions of Russia. But what we are going to see next is potentially the biggest effort when it comes from mediation, and that's coming from China. We're going to see the special representative for Eurasian affairs from the Chinese Foreign Ministry, Li Hui, coming on a visit to Ukraine, to Poland, to France, to Germany and to Russia. That's all next week. Now, he will be the first senior figure from the Chinese government to go to Ukraine since the fighting started. He's going to be putting forward China's vision of how to bring about an end to the fighting. China has put forward its plan about how Beijing sees an end to the conflict coming about. It's the first time it's going to be put forward on the ground in these various countries. Obviously, China is looking to bring in international partners as well to try and help bring about this idea, this plan that's being put forward. We'll be following that very closely to see how that trip develops and, of course, how that peace plan develops. But what we've heard from Volodymyr Zelensky while he's been here in Berlin is really a message that as long as he keeps getting the aid that he's been promised from states like Berlin, allies like Germany, this new $3 billion worth of military hardware, that he believes that Ukraine can defeat Russia on the battlefield, and once that's done, then they can start talking about peace talks.
Peter, many thanks for that. Peter Oliver in Berlin. An Egyptian brokered ceasefire has ended days of fighting between Israel and the militant group Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip. 34 Palestinians and 1 Israeli were killed in the violence. Israel has now reopened its commercial border crossing, allowing fuel trucks and other goods to enter the enclave. The latest fighting began when Israel launched a series of airstrikes it said was aimed at senior Islamic Jihad commanders. A powerful cyclone is hitting the coastlines of Bangladesh and Myanmar after intensifying to the equivalent of a Category 5 storm. Cyclone Mocha is bringing heavy rain and winds gusting over 215 kilometres per hour. Homes have been destroyed inside the world's biggest refugee camp in Cox's Bazar, where nearly 1 million Rohingya refugees live. Trees have been uprooted and streets in Myanmar's Sittwe province have been turned into rivers. Now, among the raft of agreements signed recently during the meeting of the presidents of Brazil and China in Beijing in April, one was crucial: the creation of the China-Brazil Centre for Research and Prevention of Infectious Diseases. It's the first time the two nations have set up a joint scientific centre. Lucrecia Franco in Rio has more.
Brazil's Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, known as Fiocruz, is the world's largest manufacturer of the yellow fever vaccine. It has operated in Rio de Janeiro for more than 120 years and has regional affiliates throughout the country. Renowned for tackling transmittable diseases, it will now become one of the 2 centers of a unique Brazil-China partnership. The other center will operate at the Chinese Academy of Sciences Institute of Microbiology in Beijing. It's part of an agreement signed in April by both countries to create a center for disease prevention that will tackle pandemics and epidemics, ranging from COVID-19 to dengue and influenza.
The plan that we had before the pandemics had to be upgraded. Why? Because we learned so much with the pandemics. And working together, we have problems, they have problems, but perhaps we have different problems. And then we can profit from common knowledge.
Dengue fever, for example, is on the rise in Brazil. This year alone, over 300,000 cases have been reported, and it also concerns China, experts here say, as climate change is boosting mosquito-borne diseases worldwide, including Zika and chikungunya. The headquarters of the new Sino-Brazilian Research Center here in Rio de Janeiro and in Beijing are expected to become fully operational by early 2025, with Brazilian and Chinese researchers working together in both cities. Joining forces and preparing for future pandemics is crucial, but more importantly, scientists say it will serve humankind.
So, we can generate local knowledge, but this local knowledge is going to be used universally. See? This is very important. We're not working only for Brazil and China. We are working for the public health, or the global public health. This is very clear.
The Brazil-China agreement will also focus on vaccines, diagnostic tests, therapies and medicines. This is the first effort grounded in 2 physical units, 1 in each country. Lucrecia Franco, CGTN, Rio de Janeiro.
A night of glitz and glamour as the English city of Liverpool hosted the world's biggest musical event. Sweden's Loreen walked away with the Eurovision Song Contest trophy. She's the first woman to win the trophy twice. Well, Dean Veletic is an historian of contemporary Europe and an academic expert on the Eurovision Song Contest. He said the show marked a celebration of cultures through music.
The combination of British culture and Ukrainian culture was highly symbolic. The acknowledgement given to the musical heritage of Liverpool, its pop music heritage, the Beatles, Atomic Kitten, other acts. It made for a fantastic night last night in the arena.
And massive viewing figures around the world. Was this different in any other way other than it being, of course, hosted by the UK instead of Ukraine?
Well, not really. We still had many genres represented in the contest. We had 26 acts, as usual, for the final. So really what made this special was the fact that Britain was hosting on behalf of Ukraine, which had won last year, but couldn't host because of the war. And this combination of British culture and Ukrainian culture, which is something that we've never seen in Eurovision before.
Really unique, and Sweden seems to have a winning formula when it comes to this contest. Loreen now a 2-time winner, Sweden 7-time winners alongside Ireland. What's the secret?
Well, the Swedish popular music industry has historically been successful in Eurovision ever since the win of ABBA in 1974, Eurovision launching ABBA on the international stage. Swedish songwriters and composers have also been very prominent in the production of entries for other countries in Eurovision. So there is a particular Swedish pop music formula. I would say it's a bit like the formula of IKEA and H&M when it comes to other products, producing something that is catchy, that is easily understandable by international audiences. So this is something that was also reflected last night in the Swedish win. I would say, though, that there is a trend towards more authenticity in Eurovision entries. The Finnish act came a very close second, and it is arguably more original than Loreen's song. It was also performed in Finnish. An entry in Finnish has not yet won Eurovision, even though a Finnish entry did win Eurovision in 2006 for the first time.
So unlike IKEA furniture or clothes from H&M, Eurovision is a huge expense for any country that wants to host it, but it can bring benefits too, can't it?
Oh, certainly. It can draw a lot of tourists. We've seen that this year in Liverpool. We saw it last year in Turin. These cities have both experienced a boon with regards to tourist arrivals during Eurovision. So when it comes to tourism earnings, a city can certainly benefit from hosting Eurovision, especially if it's not one of the major cities in the country, such as Rome or London. These second cities tend to really benefit from Eurovision.
Dean Veletic there. Our top stories again. Votes are being counted in Turkey for what's been called the most pivotal election in the country's modern history. Early results show that President Erdogan is ahead of his rival, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. Vote counting is underway in Thailand's general election. Early results show the two main opposition parties are firmly ahead. And the time to act is now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky tells Western leaders as he urges an end to the conflict with Russia during a visit to Germany. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. There's more on CGTN Europe's channel on the Telegram app, or scan the QR code on the screen to get stories and updates sent direct to your phone. There's more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, it's Razor. For now, though, from all the team in London, it's goodbye.